Welcome to Dave Talks Ball in this September 2nd, 2024 episode, folks. We got week one in the books. It's Labor Day. Happy Labor Day to those who had off today. Well, we did not, the SEC Unfiltered, especially, I'm not really counting myself here. I'm talking Cole Thompson and Chris Phillips grinding with those previews. You've seen them post a couple of them. They did 5 today, so go check those out, those previews. We're going to have some more previews out tomorrow as well, but it's not Labor Day for the SEC Unfiltered channel or platform out there, folks. Well, there's a lot of previews being dished out, but for people that had off today, I hope you had a phenomenal day, taking it all in. Maybe you had a beer or two. Maybe you didn't. Maybe just set some time, hanging out with your family or whatnot, maybe catching some of that Florida State game going on. But I do appreciate you sitting in and joining for the second episode of Dave Talks Ball. I am Dave Shumate, longtime college football recruiting personnel director in the SEC and some other schools around college football. I feel like I bring a pretty good dynamic to this channel overall from an insight standpoint, and obviously from a live show. Used to be on Mach 10 Sports, my own channel. Used to do a show on Monday and Thursday nights. I've now brought that live show over here during football seasons, Monday and Wednesday nights. Dave Talks Ball at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time Zone. At some point, I'll stop saying that. Once the consistent viewership starts to know the time, we're not going to say that anymore. But hey, it's the second episode, folks. But we had football. We had all 16 teams in action. We got a very small sample size of all 16 teams in the conference. But I feel like you had a little bit of both of some teams who played with their food a little bit. Looking at you, South Carolina. And some teams that handled their business. I'm looking at you, Alabama. I'm looking at you, Tennessee. I'm looking at you, Texas. I'm looking at you, Ole Miss. I'm looking at you, Georgia. Those are kind of the teams. The top half of the league kind of handled their business depending where you had LSU ranked. But most of the projected teams, like I mentioned, handle business depending where you put LSU. But in the 4 biggest games, there's no denying. There's no denying. In the 4 biggest games, the premier games for the conference. I'm talking Texas A&M, Notre Dame, Florida, Miami. I'm talking Georgia, Clemson, and then what's the other one? The other one I'm missing, the midday, Texas A&M, Notre Dame, Miami, Florida, LSU. That was it. LSU, USC, and then Georgia holding it down. Don't forget about the Vanderbilt Commodores, folks. Probably having the best win of the weekend. I know Georgia beat the better team in Clemson, and Virginia Tech may be overrated. But again, I took Virginia Tech in the minus 12.5, and we'll review the money-making weekend picks at the end of the show. Just to tell you, I went 5-5 or 5-7 on the year. It's better than we were at this point last year. I mean, you always want to be at that around 60%. We're a little under that, but hey, it's only week one. We'll take it. But we'll talk about that here in a minute. But really, Vanderbilt and Georgia are kind of the headliners from an actual legitimate win that you could go hang your hat on. But I feel like the top half of the league did what they were supposed to do in dominant fashion. But you also had some teams who played with their food, and you also had Florida, Notre Dame, and LSU disappoint. If Florida, Notre Dame, and LSU disappoint. Now, to be fair, Florida, Texas A&M, and LSU are not projected to be in the top 5. Some people may have LSU in their top 5 in the league heading in, but don't think these games won't be looked upon in December when we're starting to talk about college football playoff spots by the committee. The 1-3 record honestly makes this upcoming weekend's Texas-Michigan game a very important one across the league. It does. If the SEC were to drop that one, they'd be 0-2 in the 2 big games against the SEC Big Ten. That's going to matter come December when the SEC is trying to get that 5th spot. They're trying to get that 5th spot. They're going to get 4. But that 5th spot I'm telling you that one will be interesting there. But with that being said, we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about that. We're going to talk about the week 1 matchups, takeaways. What's next for Billy Napier? Probably couldn't have scripted a worse. You probably couldn't have had a worse script for him. Just losing would have been tough. But the way he got dismantled in the swamp, we'll talk about what's next. We will have new power ratings out. We'll go quickly through that. New power rankings. Some adjustments here and there. Obviously, Vanderbilt moving up. Some teams moving down. And then another segment we will introduce tonight, the best and worst things I saw from this weekend. We'll do this every week on the show on Monday. Then we will review the money-making Wednesday results, money-making weekend. I just talked a little bit about it. And we'll kind of look ahead a little bit just to some betting lines for the SEC matchups for this upcoming weekend, folks. But let's get right to it. Let's get to why you're here. Let's start reviewing some of the SEC action. Let's get to the Big 4 games first. Georgia gets the 34-3 win over Clemson. There probably isn't a head coach in the entire country that is more fired up than Kirby Smart. There's not a more, head coach that is more fired up than Kirby Smart. Not just because of the win, but because he can go show the missed opportunities and the lack of consistency from the second half, but also applaud his guys, give them a pat on the back on how they, and his coaches, how they adjusted at halftime. No one adjusts better than Georgia at half. Go listen to any of these behind the SEC scenes they do on the SEC Network. I think it's one of the best things the SEC Network does. You'll see Kirby calm and collected. I always see people like, man, he probably got into their ass at half. No, he's going to go in kind of like the Pat Summitt mindset. Hey, that team knows they didn't play well. To go in there and berate them is not going to help. Now, if you're playing well, you're up 28-0 revised. Hey, let's bring them back down to earth, mate. Guys, we got to go finish a half. They were probably cool, calm, collected, and like, hey, let's go make some adjustments. Can they go 12 rounds with us? They've gone 6, but can they go 12? So I think Kirby Smart's probably fired up. He can go into both pots there and make, hey, this is what we did well, but this is where we can definitely improve because we did not execute in the first half. Also, they received some positive news on Mykel Williams' injury, ankle sprain, big defensive lineman this year. If you don't already know about it, what are you doing? But a little bit of a scare. I think the ankle is going to be fine from talking to people that would know and then reading some articles as well. But the main point in this game, specifically this game, good thing Mykel Williams back, where Georgia adjusts, like I said, better than any team in the country. First half was not good at all. There's no sugarcoating. 6-0, but the second half, complete domination. And I thought the big question was, could Clemson go 12 rounds with Georgia? They went 6, and I thought Georgia would wear them down in the second half. A little differently, they spread them out horizontally and vertically in the passing game. But obviously Clemson couldn't go 12. Defense for Georgia showed out. That was all game. Jalen Walker, Damon Wilson, Small Munden playing with a relentless abandon. Malachi Starks, we already know about him, but man, just add another highlight interception to his reel. After the one he had against Oregon 2 years ago, the one he had on Saturday afternoon. He's a top 10 player in the sport right now. He is. Raylan Wilson, all over the place as well. Second-year player at the inside backer spot. Defense, couldn't have asked for anything more from Kirby Smart, Glenn Schumann, and Tavares Robinson. Phenomenal job across the board. Now, offensively, the penalties were limiting limiting the offense in the first half. I don't really think it was Mike. The more you went back and watched the game, it wasn't Mike Bobo wasn't being creative. The penalties would get them in long situations where it's tough to overcome that. Against a good defense like Clemson, we saw guys like Peter Woods flashing on the defensive line. They're a solid unit across the board. But in the second half, I think Georgia went to the drawing board and said, hey, we can take advantage of this secondary horizontally and vertically because they're pretty thin. Outside of A.J. Terrell's little brother, Avarius Terrell, they had a lot of holes in that back end. And overall, I don't think Georgia really has a dude they took advantage of, but it's more of a solid group. You're a little bit more fired up about it. Colby Young, London Humphreys, Dom Lovett. They got a good group of early receivers. I don't think there's a real dude in there, but Georgia's won throughout the Kirby Smart era without a real dude. I mean, Ladd McConkey's probably the most consistent guy that he's had during his time there. I mean, obviously George Pickens has the highest upside, but overall, I think the receiver group's fine, especially for early in the season. But how about moving to the backfield? And it's in a position they needed someone to step up with Trevor Etienne being suspended. How about the true freshman from modern day, Nate Frazier, 11 carries for 83 yards and a score. Just phenomenal. If you listen to any of my stuff, I was hyping him up all preseason. I expected a big game kind of because he had to, especially with Branson Robinson kind of coming back from a knee injury. Roderick Robinson out with a turf toe. He kind of had to play, and he executed. They needed him to step up with Trevor Etienne being out. But overall, best win of the weekend when you're factoring in context. I know Vanderbilt, people are going to throw that in, but that's because people didn't expect Vanderbilt to win, including myself. But Georgia probably best win overall. I know I said maybe early in the show, probably maybe Vanderbilt, but Georgia, when you really look at it, probably the most impressive. But the second half destruction, just totally Georgia's MO. It's not everybody can go 12 rounds with it, man. You can go 6, and even then Clemson wasn't up at halftime. It was still 6-0. It wasn't pretty for Georgia, but man, it's tough to go 12 rounds with the Dogs. Georgia getting it done. Armando Baez, appreciate the comment, brother. Appreciate you listening. He's talking about how about them Sooners. Yeah, we'll talk about those Sooners here in a minute, but I appreciate you listening there, Armando Baez. And yeah, before we keep moving on, we got the Georgia wrap up, 34-3. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell in the SEC Unfiltered content. It's SEC 24/7, 365, football, basketball, and baseball, but we're going to have content bleeding out the eyes. I know that's graphic, just bleeding out the eyes, though, come football season. This isn't the home studio. We're here at my parents', so we actually went on a college trip with my buddies. We always do on Labor Day weekend. in Gulf Shores and decided to come over to my parents who don't live far. So I'm doing it from my dad's office in here. So we'll be broadcasting here from this week. Just a heads up, we'll do Wednesday night show here as well. And then next week we'll be back at the home base. But just giving you some filters in there. But moving to the next one, the one a lot of people are going to want to talk about, Florida getting embarrassed by Miami 41-17 in the Swamp. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Just embarrassed across the board. You could not. Let's just put it this way: Billy Napier and Mario Cristobal were hired 8 days apart back in 2021 in December. They went about building the roster differently, but one program left the Swamp on Saturday, let's be honest, looking like a playoff contender, and the other one didn't, not even close to it. Hoping to get it's making Vegas's over-under win total look phenomenal, which I kind of was on that part. Kind of towards the end of the offseason, I'll be honest, I was probably giving Florida another win, but I was always in the 5-6 win range. Maybe they prove us wrong, they turn on, but I doubt it. But you couldn't have wrote a worse script for Billy Napier to start year 3 than you saw on Saturday afternoon. Like I mentioned, a loss wouldn't have been great, but you weren't even competitive in probably the biggest game of your tenure. The thing that should bother Florida fans, if I was a Florida fan, is it's the same mistakes you saw from Florida last year in their opener against Utah. Not enough men on the field, too many men on the field. I mean, Florida had to call a timeout out of a TV timeout because they were about to get a delay of game on offense. That stuff, I mean, I get it. It's first week. They always say it's first week for everybody. Heck, I was doing some last-minute scrambling last week, getting some stuff in. It's first week for everybody, folks. But come on, man. You get paid the big bucks. Come on, man. You can't be calling timeouts out of a TV timeout. Now, before we go on this rant, let's let it be known. Miami is a good football team. I was really impressed with Miami. I think they're going to win the ACC. I feel like they're more confident than even my prediction going into the season. I thought Miami would win the ACC. I thought it'd be them and Clemson. I still feel good about that. I'm not going to bring Clemson in this, but some people may be like, you think Clemson's going to play? Yeah. Have you seen the ACC? Have you seen Florida State? Last time I checked, it was 14-7 when I came in here to start the show. So, but the ACC ain't great. SMU hadn't looked great. I mean, it's probably Georgia Tech and Miami, the two most impressive teams right now. But I think Clemson's defense will give them a chance this week. But I do, to my point, I think Miami is the class of the ACC. I expect them to get a first-round bye. I do. I think they're the best team in the ACC. And before people be like, well, Mario Cristobal, he's not a good coach. You see the way he play called against Georgia Tech and they fumbled the football and it cost them a game. I get it. But you know how many bad coaches have had really good teams for a year before? Larry Coker at the same school, University of Miami. Les Miles probably should get a little more credit than he should, but a lot of people wouldn't say he's great. Ed Orgeron at LSU as well. Just naming 3 off the top of my head. Not great game day coaches have fielded plenty of good teams before, and I think that's possible this year with the roster that Mario Cristobal has put together, mainly because of Cam Ward, who is the player of the week in college football, sitting right up there at the top of the Heisman Trophy candidate race, along with Jackson Dart, in my opinion. But very impressive. And I didn't believe he'd be that good. I don't think anybody did because it was his first start. He'd been an incarnate word in Washington State. This is by far the toughest environment he was going to have to go play in at his first start in Miami, at a place where you thought Florida would kind of be like a wounded dog backed up into a corner. And you never want to go attack a wounded dog that's backed in the corner because they're fighting for their life. But Florida wasn't fighting for their life. But Cam Ward, 26 for 35, 385 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Some of those interceptions are going to come into it because he'll go across the field and throw back to the middle of the field. That's going to have some interceptions, or that's going to have some turnovers and some bad decisions at times. But it's going to convert some big-time improvision plays on third down. So, I mean, Cam Ward was the major difference in this game, like by far, the MVP for Miami. Can he keep this up? I'd like to believe so. Go look at that schedule. I think they play Florida A&M this week, Ball State, and Miami is going to win the ACC, folks. I hate to tell you. But Graham Mertz on the other end. Let's go to the other side of this at quarterback spot. 11 for 20, 90 yards and an interception, left because he was in concussion protocol. But Mertz wasn't the primary issue. The right side of the offensive line is still a major concern. They moved Damian George from right tackle to inside, bigger body. He doesn't have to be outside on the edges facing speed rushers as much. I like the move. It fits his upside. Moved him into the right guard, brought in Brandon Crenshaw-Dixon from San Diego State. But Cam Waits got the start. But both Crenshaw-Dixon and Cam Waits were not good yesterday, not good 2 days ago on Saturday afternoon at the right tackle spot. Just could not get the job done, did not grade it out. When I went back and watched that game, I was like, yeah, I mean, none of those tackles played well. They didn't. And George had his moments. He was okay. Some lack of effort at times, though. But if I'm a Florida fan, I'm kind of sitting there like, all right, where's Roderick Kearney? He's got to be just as good as anybody else. I mean, adjust a little bit. And I know they're probably, Damian George, the interior guy, and Rod Kearney's an interior guy. That's probably what Rob Sell, the offensive line coach, would tell me. But I think you kind of got to start looking at Rod Kearney a little bit. I mean, look how DJ Lagway sparked some life into the offense in the fourth, and he's going to play some significantly this week against Samford and probably A&M because we don't know how long Graham Mertz is going to be out. These concussion protocols in today's time, right, wrong, or indifferent, that's a conversation for another day. They last a long time, especially in football. I mean, go look at Alabama basketball. Latrell Wright cell. I know it's a conversation for another day, but he was out like 4 weeks with a concussion. I mean, if those headaches, you don't pass concussion protocol, you could be out for a very long time. Even if you wait, you feel decent. You're like, oh, yeah, I could go play. But no, they run tests. It may be DJ Lagway's team for the next 3 to 4 weeks, folks. I don't know. I'm not saying that. I don't have any inside information. But it wouldn't be so. If I'm Florida, I may go a little youth movement. I know it's early. But, man. But Florida has several issues defensively against the Hurricanes as well, including no pass rush, busted coverages all over the field, some costly penalties, roughing the passer, if I remember right. But another problem on Florida was what was the weakness last year? They were the worst tackling team in the SEC last year. They said how all season they worked on it in the spring. They had 11 missed tackles by 9 different guys yesterday. It doesn't look that much improved, man. It looked like Groundhog Day all over again in Gainesville. It's early. It's early, folks. Here we are. But that SEC opener in 2 weeks in Gainesville against Texas A&M, another team that's going to be coming in struggling offensively, make or break game. I mean, A&M needs it, but Florida really needs it. I'm interested just to see what the environment at the Swamp will be. But finally, just some pondering thoughts before we really talk about what's next for Billy Napier. But was Miami that good or was Florida that bad? I would leave. Miami's a really good football team. They're going to be in the college football playoffs. They're going to win the ACC. I feel very comfortable saying that, folks. Florida's probably not as bad as they showed on Saturday. I know that's not saying a lot, but Florida's probably not as bad as they showed on Saturday. I don't think they're great. Still think they're in that 4 to 5 win range now, but probably not as bad. I think Florida's legit. I mean, I think Miami's legit, especially when you factor in their schedule. Again, I think they're going to win the ACC. But what is next for Billy Napier? What is next for Billy Napier, folks? Pull it up real fast. That's a question. I'm sorry, I wanted to pull up the schedule so we could walk through this. What is next for Billy Napier? Let me share the screen here. All right. So just walking you through. Here we go. So 0-1. They get Samford, Texas A&M at home. I mentioned that. Big one. At Mississippi State, on paper, they should be better than a first-year Jeff Levy led Mississippi State. I don't care where it's at. Off UCF at Tennessee, Kentucky at home, bye week, Georgia and Jacksonville at Texas, LSU at home, Ole Miss at home, at Florida State. We knew November was going to be tough. This game might not be as tough as it was, but who knows where both these teams are even at this point. They both don't look good at all right now. And I even checked the Florida State score. I need to probably pull that up. But I'm locked in with you people, baby. Recapping week 1, and no place I'd rather be. But then, I mean, I don't see no chance they're going to win all 4 of those. And remember, momentum is a massive thing in college football now. So, I mean, if they go in this bye week and they have 2 wins, they're not going to go rally. They're not going to go win one for the Gipper in November, folks. So just kind of giving you a look ahead. Remember, a lot of coaches lose their job on the bye week. I don't know if it'll be over by this point, though. Come week 4, they should beat Samford. I mean, if they lose at A&M and if they lose to A&M and Mississippi State, though, he will be gone here. This is the game, the UCF game that I'm talking about. If he were to lose that and they beat Samford and maybe beat Mississippi State, let's just say they're sitting there at 2-2 going to the bye week, and they go and lose to UCF at home 2-3. That's 2 in a row. They've lost to UCF going back to 3 years ago in the Gasparilla Bowl. That's probably where he's going. And again, I know people are like, well, what about the bye week? Maybe they do get him through at Tennessee and Kentucky at home and get rid of him. But man, that would be tough for them not to kind of rally the troops, because you got to start making moves earlier now with the portal, retaining your roster, getting in there, getting your coaching staff together to go get the roster for December. You got to go get your team ready for the next year. I mean, you saw the rule. They're thinking about passing it where it's just a December signing period, no more spring. So you got to get your personnel homework done in the December period. I'm glad there's one period, but I'm just bringing it up for the sake of conversation. But going back, I think there's a 0% chance Billy Napier's back. I think there's a 0% chance Billy Napier is back next year. Now people can be, no way, you're saying that after one. I'm probably not alone in saying that, but again, once you start talking about your head coach getting fired, you probably should fire him. I've always said that. What coaches ever really came off the true hot seat? Me and Chris Phillips talked about that on the Texas Sports Unfiltered show last week or 2 weeks ago, and he brought up one. Here's one guy I can think of, Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh was on the hot seat after losing to Ohio State, taking some losses to Michigan State, got that Ohio State monkey off his back, started rolling. He turned it around. But not many people do. Once a great administrator when I worked at the University of Georgia told me, it's like, Dave, or she called me Shu, the moment you start thinking about you needing to fire your coach, you probably need to. And the exact numbers, what, they owe him $27 million at the end of the year, and it really doesn't drop off much more the next year. Honestly, they're going to have to pay him. Say they ended up winning 5 and they kept him. I mean, it doesn't go up much more. I mean, they're going to have to pay him another year's salary anyways. I think they could raise the money and get it done. I know some people are like, they still owe Dan Mullen $1 million a year, I think, through 2027. But again, I think they would get it done if they wanted to. To me, $27 million really ain't that much. They could raise that and get that done. Who they go after, I'm not ready to have that conversation. But I'm here to tell you, Billy Napier will not be back in Gainesville. There's just no way. The momentum internally is bigger than it's ever been in college football, and kids will check out once you start. That A&M game in 2 weeks is a must-win. You lose that, it's over. It's over. I mean, I think there's a 0% chance he's back. I just don't think they get it done. I mean, I think it's going to come down to how his only hope is probably really playing DJ Lagway. Just let him roll out the rest of the season. Who knows? You may be with him, like I mentioned, a couple more weeks with Graham Mertz's concussion protocol with the medical side of things now. They're not just going to just give, hey, man, you can open your eyes, remember your name. Here's your helmet, son. Get back in there. No. It's a day-to-day process. Hey, is your headaches going? How you're reacting to light? Are you light sensitive? Who knows? We may be with DJ Lagway for a while, but he did bring some energy and score when he came in. And I don't even think the interception was his fault. That was the protection for the right side. So, I mean, maybe you get that going. You win 5 games. You build some positive momentum. And they're like, hey, we got our guy of the future. Let's keep him. And sometimes I think, hey, well, Billy can hang that over their head. Hey, don't fire me. He may leave. He may leave anyways. But again, I think Billy Napier is gone. I just don't see you coming back from that. I mean, that's one of the more embarrassing losses in Florida Gator history when you factor in how big of a game it was going in for Florida, Billy Napier, and it was at home against a team and staff, Mario Cristobal, that was hired the same exact month, 8 days apart back in 2021. That's tough. I think Billy Napier's gone. I hate to say that. I think they do probably a pretty good job overall. It's just, dude, nobody cares if the locker room's clean if you're not winning games, man. It's a win. As Jimbo Fisher used to say when I was at Texas A&M, and I'm sure the Jimbo Fisher jokes will flood in, but it's a scoreboard business, folks. You either do or you don't. The haves or have-nots. Billy Napier's not getting it done right now, man. And it doesn't matter how clean that locker room is. But that is the recap from Miami's dismantling of 41-17 in the Swamp. Before we move to the Notre Dame A&M defensive slugfest, let's get some comments. Who we got on here? Let's go back up. Midwest Picker, appreciate you listening, brother. Florida got whipped on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Yep, you're definitely right. We just talked about it. Same man 23, FSU garbage. If someone could give me a score in here, I'd really appreciate it. SEC aside, number 10, FSU is about to start 0-2. That's what it was looking like before I came on the show. Texas A&M is at Florida November 14th. Looms large. We just talked about that for both teams. I'll be interested what the line is on that. I actually think A&M is better than Florida, but that'll be an interesting. What will that crowd be like? Was that a 2:30 kickoff? I have to go look it up, but what will the Swamp be like? What will it be like this week against the Sanford Bulldogs? Probably not a lot of people. Armando, BC putting it on at FSU, overrated. Midwest Picker again. Florida State stinks. Looking at home to Boston College. Joe K. Florida has the toughest schedule in the SEC to end the year. They need to win early to get a bowl. True, but Florida State doesn't look as great, and LSU doesn't either. But again, we don't know what Billy and Florida and them's momentum is going to be like going into November, so it's tough to look that far ahead. Michael, Anthony, not only did Miami embarrass Florida in their own house, they went and shook hands with the recruits after the fact, and that, my friend, is why I love college football. Yeah, that happens a lot if the visiting team locker room's over there towards the recruiting section. We're in LSU in 2019. They did that to Alabama too, as well. You see that a lot. Michael Anthony as well. Cristobal got himself fired last year when he couldn't comprehend what taking a knee was. I called this comment would be in this chat room, did I not? Bad football coaches on game day have fielded many of great teams in college football's history. I named Larry Coker, Les Miles, Ed Orgeron have all won national championships. We're not great game day guys. The roster's there, and they got the guy at the position you need the most in college football this year, and it's Cam Ward. Midwest Picker. Appreciate it, Midwest Picker. Boston College 14-6 at half, folks. Yeah, Michael Anthony 14-6 at half. Man, that would be to my point. Florida's schedule doesn't look as near as daunting if Florida State's rough like that. So let's get back to it. We're going to get back to the Notre Dame Texas A&M game. Notre Dame outlast the Aggies at Kyle Field. But first and foremost, that atmosphere at Kyle Field was unbelievable. I worked at A&M for 2 years. It's not hostile. It's not like a nasty environment. You're not getting spit on. You're not getting beer poured on you. Just a loud environment. It is a loud environment. They play Mo Bamba on third down. It gets loud. They're getting into that. But this game kind of went how I thought it would. I just thought A&M would win this game in a very close, low-scoring game. I took the under. I thought there'd be a lot of penalties on Notre Dame. They had 11. They had a lot of false starts. That crowd was affecting their communication with Riley Leonard. I thought this game literally scripted exactly almost how I thought it would to a T. I just thought A&M would be the team wearing them down at the very end. I didn't think it'd be the Notre Dame offensive line against the Texas A&M defensive line. But I think everybody kind of saw this coming defensively. These both could be top 15 defensive units. When you go back and watch the film of this game, you're like, yeah. I mean, I think Notre Dame's going to be in the playoffs. A 10-2 Notre Dame, folks, is getting into the playoffs. But I thought outside of 3 runs for the Irish, the Aggies looked good defensively. I mean, Notre Dame was 2 for 12 on third down and averages 5 yards per pass. It was just they would use Riley Leonard's legs as the X factor. That was kind of the difference. The only problem with that is the Aggies averaged 3.3 yards per attempt themselves. So I was saying Notre Dame averaged 5 yards a pass. Texas A&M only averaged 3.3 yards as attempt themselves. And it was just not a good day for Connor Wigman or new OC who came over from Kansas State, Colin Klein. You remember him, player was a Heisman Trophy finalist at K-State. Now, I'll be honest with you. I don't think these two are right for each other at all from a marriage relationship standpoint. Colin Klein was a runner himself in between the tackles. Skylar Thompson was at K-State, and so was Will Howard. That's not Connor Wigman at all. I think Connor Wigman lacks a little toughness, a little bit of a fake guy to him a little bit. That's nothing personally against the kid. I said all offseason, folks, he's got to mature, take more of a pro approach. He just looked totally unsettled the other day. I mean, he finished, 12 for 30, 100 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. That's not it at that level as the Texas A&M quarterback coach. I mean, this is a guy that's getting projected by someone to go in the first round. And again, you see the arm ability. You see the hand talent. You see the arm talent. I just don't – the production hadn't come with it against good teams. I mean, his best game was probably, Miami last year on the road and a loss. But everyone overhyping Connor Wigman. Still a long season. Maybe he gets it figured out. But I think it's more of a wait-and-see approach, at least for myself. He looked unsettled all night. Go back and watch. I'm reading my notes now from go back and watching the game. He's just moving off his landmarks on most throws, just not staying in the pocket. Now, to be fair, I think this Notre Dame defensive front and Al Golden, the defense coordinator, did a phenomenal job. But come on, 12 for 30, 100 yards and 2 picks. That ain't getting it done. I don't care if you're playing the steel curtain defense. That's just not. It's not going to cut it as a high-end SEC quarterbacks. Now, Texas A&M had other issues on offense as well. The offensive line had multiple guys go down. They couldn't really block very well either. Center Martin Naboo is out for the year. Looks like Utah transfer. The FIU kid, honestly, is probably going to play that center spot. And he looked better, honestly, than the Naboo did himself. But that's depth. And offensive line depth is tough to find. But the Aggie receivers got no separation. Noah Thomas, Ja'Day Walker, where was Moose Muhammad? None of them got any separation. Now, that's a really good Notre Dame secondary. You got Xavier Watts back there and the Morrison kid, 2 future NFL guys. Could be one of the better secondaries, if not the best secondary the A&M Aggies face all year. I mean, it could. And I think Notre Dame is a playoff team. I mean, their hardest games left are Louisville at home, Florida State at home. We talked about that. Then at USC in the year. If they're 10-2, they're going to put Notre Dame in, folks. It's good for business. Let's put it that way. But overall, I don't care how good you are on defense. And A&M, I think, is really good up front. They just wore down because the offense wasn't helping them. But, man, the defense is going to keep them in games. But the offense just has to come around for them to be average. And if it doesn't come around, they're going to find themselves 6-6, 6-6, 7-5 in Mike Elko's first year. And I think they have higher expectations than that. If the offense can come around, I don't think it's a 9-win team. I think realistically 8 wins is what this team should be focusing on. And if they get the offense rolling a little bit, get comfortable, get Connor Wigman and Colin Klein married up. Again, I think that was a very interesting hire. Rumor was Mike Elko came down to Mike Denbrock, the OC at Notre Dame, who's at LSU the last few years, and Colin Klein. He chose Colin Klein. And with the quarterback, Connor Wigman, seems fishy. It makes me almost think they wanted to go get somebody else, and this is just how it worked out. It just doesn't seem like a good fit. I don't know how much can really change. Yeah, can it get better? Certainly. Connor Wigman threw for 100 yards and 2 interceptions, folks. It can get better, but I think 8-4 should be the realistic goal for the Ags after that week 1 loss to Notre Dame. But the defense, man, both defenses are really good. I think they could be top 15 units in college football, but Notre Dame gets the 23-13 win over the Aggies on Saturday night. It was great. That's a hostile environment, folks. That was I should say hostile, loud environment. Alan Bonner, you talk so fast. Thought you were saying Midwest Pecker. Texas A&M defense looked good, kept them in the game. You're right, Joe. You're right. 100%. 100%. The defense is going to give them a chance every week. It's going to give them a chance every week. It's just if the offense can come around at all, how do they marry that up? I just don't see it right now. Maybe I'm wrong. Again, I talked about Florida A&M being a big test for Florida. It's not as big because it's Mike Elko's first year. It's a pretty big one. They need it. They can go get it. They're probably the better team. Let's just see how they adjust over the next 2 weeks offensively. Moving over to the next game, last night's action, USC getting the 27-20 win over LSU. I actually asked Chris Phillips this a week or two ago. Were we, as college football fan base, were we ready for USC to win this game? Like, what would be the perception of LSU football if they were to lose a 5th straight opener and 3rd straight for Brian Kelly? I asked him that, and he was like, man, we aren't really talking about that. Kind of like we assumed Georgia would beat Clemson, but that did happen. But this was one of the more even myself, I thought LSU would actually have more success on the ground. But it's 5th straight opener for LSU, 3rd straight for Brian Kelly. And they have Clemson the next 2 years in 26-27. So when will LSU will get to 7 straight losses for the Tigers? If you want to see how upset people are, go tune into the Whiskey and Wine with Matt Moscana, T-Bob Hebert, and then Are You Serious Sports call-in show postgame with Blake Ruffino, friend of the show, and see how pissed LSU fans are. And I don't blame them. The issues I would have if I were an LSU fan is it seems that every opener, Brian Kelly and LSU just commit the same dumb mistakes that cost them in every game. It really does feel like that. Oh, let's switch the banner. It really does feel like that. It feels like Brian Kelly and LSU just come unprepared and do the same thing, dumb mistakes over and over again in every opener. Like, why, if you're Brian Kelly, do you take the ball to open the game? You win the toss. You take the ball to open the game. And I'm all right with that, whatever. And then decided to go for it on 4th and goal from the 3 in the first possession, didn't get it. You had a 13-play drive, first drive of the season. You get 3 points to reward your offense. That's just depleting if you come away with nothing after a 13-play drive. You get 3 points there. I'm a defer guy, but hey, if you want to go, let's go get some points. I kind of like the confidence. Let's go. Let's go get us some points. If it gets to 4th down and you're in the red zone, first drive of the season, you kick the field goal, Brian. That's where Brian Kelly's getting them beat. You take 3 points after a very good 13-play drive. That's something initially that came up in my notes when prepping for this one. Now, to a positive. How about that LSU defense and Blake Baker? How bad was that LSU defense last year? How bad was that LSU defense? And does it still have some issues this year? Absolutely. They still have some holes. They're not very good personnel-wise. They got Harold Perkins and really Savion Jones. And Ashton Stamps is okay on the back end. They still have issues in the secondary and depth issues up front. But the aggressive play style I like from Blake Baker, because you're like, hey, we're going to live by the sword, die by the sword. We're going to be aggressive. We're going to force negative plays. We're going to force some turnovers, and we're going to be willing to live with us giving up some explosive plays as well. Think John Chavis, Todd Grantham, for people that aren't really like, what is he talking about? Besides, if you missed the game a little bit last night, if you watched the game last night, you saw how much Blake Baker was blitzing. Now, Savion Jones, I mentioned him, madman, 5 tackles, 2 TFLs, 2 sacks. Harold Perkins led the Tigers in tackles, I think, with like 8, something like that. And I thought even an interior guy, the Wisconsin transfer, Gio Paez, on the interior played some good snaps. And I'm not high on LSU's interior at all, but I thought he played some good snaps when you go back and watch the game. But this game came down to the details, attention to detail, and discipline. Attention to detail and discipline, something LSU has struggled with every opener under Brian Kelly. Already mentioned the questionable decisions by Brian Kelly before the game to even take the football to open it up and then go for it on fourth down after an awesome 13-play drive. Just killed any momentum there. But LSU had multiple penalties that killed them as well. The Kyron Lacey gun celebration when he scored, dumb, stupid. Major Burns taking his helmet off after a big fourth down stop that pushed LSU's next drive back to like the 25-30, killed that momentum to an extent. Then Jordan Gilbert's targeting play against Kyron Hudson at the very end that made the big play. I think it was like a 30-35 play situation there after I think he got 15, 20 yards on the play, then an add on another 15. Yeah, I think it was a 20-yard catch. Phenomenal catch, by the way. And Jordan Gilbert hit him with the obvious targeting 15 plus. That put the ball on the, I think, 15-yard line for USC. On LSU's 15-yard line, setting up, it could be a last-minute field goal. They ended up running it in, but still with 8 seconds left. Just undisciplined. Then the one I haven't seen many people talk about is it seemed like the LSU's offensive coaches didn't know the 2-minute warning was coming up in the second half when LSU was driving to go get a field goal. And Garrett Nussmeyer's yelling at the sideline, like, do we want to get a play in before the 2-minute warning? Remember, that's a new rule this year. 2-minute warning. It's like the NFL now. At the end of each half, there's a 2-minute warning at the end of the second quarter, 2-minute warning at the end of the fourth. The veteran player knew it, but Joe Sloan, Brian Kelly didn't. Then LSU, like Florida, all offseason, talking about culture improvements, discipline, wide receiver and it didn't work out. I mean, Will Campbell was stating last week, and I get it. He's a kid. He's a college player. He's fired up. But saying he's not going to Caesar's Palace, he's looking for a fist fight. Well, I mean, I thought LSU's offensive line played a little underwhelming, and he committed 2 critical pre-snap penalties. I mean, just overall. And then Brian Kelly with the post-game, he's hitting tables, beating up tables, and he has this quote from Brian Kelly. I think this is the first time since I've been here that I'm pretty angry at our football team. LSU coach Brian Kelly said, from a big picture, we didn't play complimentary football, but the thing that is most concerning to me are the personal fouls, the penalties that are selfish. That's what I'm mentioning. Both of them led to scores, and they're undisciplined penalties that fall back on me. We take pride in running a disciplined program, but we have clearly not done a good enough job because of the impact of the game. You haven't done a good enough job in the opener for the past 3 years, BK. Come on, man. You got to be more hands-on. If I'm an LSU fan, that was the issue. If you want to be I'll tell you something right here, folks. The personnel on defense is Brian Kelly's fault because he didn't do a good enough job the first year or two recruiting the personnel. Because you know what? Frank Wilson, his recruiting coordinator, was picking the entire roster, who happens to just be the running backs coach, who has a big name in the state of Louisiana. And he's gotten phenomenal players out of the state of Louisiana before. Frank Wilson's one of the more renowned, known, famous LSU coaches of all time. I mean, he was the head coach at UTSA, had a stint with Edwards Ryan at Ole Miss. He's been around the block. But he helped build that roster, and Brian Kelly just was kind of hands-off and let him do it. And that's why year 3 is somewhat of a rebuilding year. When year 3 in the past for Brian Kelly has been Cincinnati, BCS Bowl in the Sugar Bowl, Notre Dame year 3, 2012 National Championship game. I mean, I don't care what happened against Alabama. You go to the National Championship game, that's a good season. Year 3 is usually a big step for BK because of how he managed the state of Louisiana politics, how he just turned the roster over to one guy. That's why they're in this hole. I do think the Blake Baker hire and Bo Davis hire saved his tenure. I think it enhanced his tenure at LSU. But moving on before I get on a real rant there. Yeah, I mean, Joe Sloan and Brian Kelly just couldn't get it done. Just couldn't get it. It felt like the game plan offensively, especially in the second half, after for whatever reason they wouldn't go back to Kyron Lacey after putting massive numbers up in the first half. It was like they just didn't want Garrett Nussmeier to lose the game. I mean, they got the ball back twice in the second half with a chance to go put it away and just was very conservative. I get it. John Emery had the hot hand, but where's Caleb Jackson? One of your best, most explosive running backs. I mean, Josh Williams looked scared last night. Where's Mason Taylor in the pass game? You had him in the first half. Where's the Liberty transfer, CJ Daniels? I saw him once. They didn't want to be explosive and put the nail in the coffin. They just almost were like, Garrett, I know you're a gunslinger. Just don't go lose us this game. It's like, dude, LSU's defense is improved. Hear me out, folks. LSU's defense was improved. They were impressive last night, but they're not ready to go lead any kind of – they're not ready to go win games for LSU. And it felt like Brian Kelly was putting it on their shoulders, which I don't think is fair. And I'll say this. I think some of LSU's problems are fixable. Their problems offensively are not like the end of the world. They have to get their playmakers the football, and that's what Mike Denbrock did last year. Jaden Daniels consistently went to Jamar Chase and Brian Thomas Jr. over and over again. And then on defense, they're tremendously improved. They're going to give up explosives, either in the screen game because they blitz too much. And they still have personnel issues, but you know what? I'd rather go down swinging than what they did last year. So a tip of the cap to Blake Baker and them as well. But disappointing loss in year 3. When will LSU win an opener, folks? They go at Clemson, I think, next year and then host them the next year. I know they play Clemson in 26 and 27. Can't remember if it's at a neutral site or at all. But LSU getting a disappointing year 3 loss. USC gets the 27-20 win. We won't really know much about LSU probably until they make that trip to South Carolina. I don't know if we'll learn anything then. It's really probably that Ole Miss game, week 7. But probably first road game in the SEC, we'll definitely find out. Let's go to the chat. Joe K, maybe freshman. Appreciate you, Joe K, listening. Maybe freshman Stafford Jalen Henderson should get some time at quarterback. Maybe it fits it a little better than Connor. Nunez Gray, Michael Anthony Osborne Sr. from FB here. Was it a lack of LSU's undisciplined behavior that got them, or did Lincoln Riley put together on both sides? Probably a combination of both. Unions the Gray. Appreciate you listening. Probably a little mixture of both. I mean, I think Lincoln Riley finally got a defensive coordinator to give DeAnton Lynn and them credit. I thought that was the most physical football game I've seen USC play under Lincoln Riley. I'll say that. That's something I took away from going back and watching the game live and going back and reviewing it this morning. They played physical yesterday. They did. Both teams looked improved defensively. And then LSU's lack of discipline. I mean, I feel like it's very consistent. I mean, even going back to the special teams blunders the first year at LSU with Brian Poley. I mean, a combination of both. Iones the Gray. Tell me if I'm pronouncing that right. A combination of both. I think Lincoln Riley's put it together a little bit on both sides. Not saying they're going to win the Big Ten, but they're improved. And I think it's also a combination of LSU being undisciplined and having stupid penalties. But before we move on to the rest of the league, just briefly going over that before we get into the rest of the segments. Guys, hey, don't forget, guys, go visit our guys over at betonline.ag, folks. Cannot forget about that. You cannot forget about these guys. You can not forget about these guys. Go use code SECU at sign up to receive a special welcome offer on your first deposit, folks. MyBookie.ag, sponsor of this live show, sponsor of us at the SEC Unfiltered channel. Go use them, guys. I mean, I told you I'm 6 and 7 for the season. I'm gonna be honest with you. Every week I could be 0 for. I'm gonna tell you because I like to break it down. We all don't have the answers, but I'm gonna give it to you up front. But I do use that's who's MyBookie is mybookie.online.ag. I get fired up logging into them on Friday night, Saturday morning. I know you will do the same. But go use code SECU at sign up to receive a special welcome offer with our buddies over there, and tell them the guys over at SEC Unfiltered sent you over there. Got another chat before we move on. Honest the Gray. Sorry, fellas roll dice in the offseason. Laugh out loud. Honest the Gray. Appreciate you listening, man. Keep chatting away. I'll get to them. But moving to the rest of the scores in the SEC. Let's get to it quickly. I know everybody knows this a little bit. Thursday's action, we know Missouri got the 51-0 win over Murray State. Can't really take much from it. I thought Missouri looked faster on defense. Arkansas getting the 70-0 win over Arkansas Pine Bluff. I mean, Arkansas scored on every drive. They were 10 for 10. They got a big one this week, though. They got a big one this week at Oklahoma State and Stillwater. We'll find out a lot about the Hogs there. Oklahoma getting the big win over Temple. Struggled a little bit on third down. We'll talk about that here later, but they're getting the 51-3 win over Temple. We talked about Georgia Clemson. Texas, man, 52-0. Again, I told you the top half of the league kind of did what they were supposed to do. And Colorado State's, I think they're probably a 6-win Mountain West team, little sleeper team to win to get to the Mountain West championship game. Sorry if I said Pac-12, I meant Mountain West. And they have an NFL receiver in Horton who was supposed to test a questionable Texas secondary. You shutting them out. They have a quarterback. It's kind of a gunslinger. That's pretty impressive. Alabama getting the 63-0 win over Western Kentucky. Bama's offense looked a little sluggish right out of the gate, but man, Bama's physical this year. They're physical. Let's see if that can translate. They're going to get tested, that secondary. They only got 6 scholarship corners. They'll get tested this week with Alex Golesh and that South Florida offense coming in. Remember that game last year? I mean, Bama will probably have a chip on their shoulder, but they handled business against TJ Finley. It feels like he's been in college football forever in Western Kentucky. I was impressed with their physicality, and the offense finally got it going. Bama's got a lot of speed this year, folks. Ole Miss, 76-0. I took the under. I thought Ole Miss wasn't going to play a bunch of guys. They ended up doing it. I mean, Jackson Dart, threw for more than Connor Wigman may throw for the entire season in the first half. I'm kidding, A&M fans, if you're listening, but I had to. That was the low-hanging fruit. I had to take that one down. But massive win for A&M, I think, or for Ole Miss. I think they'll be one of the teams that'll be judged the hardest early in the season because they have about 4 or 5 like preseason games essentially heading in. We talked Notre Dame, A&M. Tennessee, I thought was another team that looked really good, getting the 69-3 wins over UT Chattanooga, baby. Old Mocky top, the Chattanooga Mocs. Tennessee, man, I think they're deeper. They're deeper. They're good up front. Nico looks like he's that guy. I'm not ready. I think he's going to have his issues. I'm interested to see how he reacts this week against NC State. And then that first game in Norman against Oklahoma, I think is going to be a different environment against a really good defense and all 3 levels the Sooners have. I'll be interested there. We talked Miami, Florida, Vanderbilt, baby, getting the 34-27 win, probably the best win, second best win, depending on who you're talking to in the SEC this year. Diego Pavia is a difference maker. He is a difference maker, folks, for this Vanderbilt team. I mean, he really is. I mean, the guy kind of brings a different juice to him. I still think the offensive line, I don't know if they can hang an entire year, and that will affect Vanderbilt. But, man, Tim Beck, the OC coming over from New Mexico State, brought over a couple of his players. Obviously, Diego Pavia, who beat Auburn last year. So the guys had 2 massive wins in his last, 3-4 starts. I'm telling you, Vanderbilt, they offensively, give Clark Lee credit. He took over the defense. He wanted to go down swinging on his own accord and brought in a little bit of an option attack. I mean, Pavia led them in rushing yesterday, 26 carries, 104 yards, and a touchdown. I called that going into the year as a bold statement for Vandy because of the system. They're going to run him a lot. Clark Lee decided to zig while everybody else was zagging. He knew he couldn't go run the same system the other teams with better personnel in the league have. He had to go be a little different. They beat a Virginia Tech team who had the most production returning in the ACC and was an under-the-radar pick for a lot of teams or people to make the playoffs or be in Charlotte to play for the ACC. So that's the biggest win of the Clark Lee era. Biggest win for Vanderbilt and Vanderbilt football probably since James Franklin. I don't remember Derek Mason get. I mean, Derek Mason won at Georgia, Kirby Smart's first year, but that was a 7-5 Georgia. I think when you factor in context and the new age of college football, because Vanderbilt's the hardest job in college football, I'm telling you, folks, when you factor in who you play every week, the lack of NIL, lack of from the academic standards as well, you got to factor that in. This is the biggest win since James Franklin was there. So tip of the cap to Clark Lee, Diego Pavia, Tim Beck, the new OC, phenomenal win in Nashville this weekend. South Carolina getting the 23-19 win over Old Dominion. I told you, take Old Dominion minus 20.5, folks. It was giving away money. South Carolina's not very good on offense, folks. They got a lot of issues. The offensive line doesn't look improved. Who's wide receiver number 1? Lenore Sellers is an okay thrower. He's an okay thrower. Dow Loggins wants to throw the rock more, but it fits more into Lenore Sellers' MO to go mix it up between runs and between the tackles. I just don't think they're ever going to get comfortable. I don't. Maybe they let analyst Mike Shula, former Bama coach, have a say in this offense. I don't know. I'm just not high on the Gamecocks. They got a lot of flack 2 weeks ago for saying they didn't really have much in the receiver room, and they don't. They got a big one at Kentucky this week. They do. Beamer knows it too. Mississippi State getting the 56-7 win over Eastern Kentucky. Good showing. Good showing for Blake Shapen. Threw for 247, 3 touchdowns. Thought it was a good offensive showing for Jeff Levy in his first year. Big one against Arizona State. They need to win this upcoming week. They need to win their 4 non-cons, and they need to go find a way to get a conference win. Just saying. That A&M game at home looks a little easier now, huh? Auburn doing what they're doing against SWAC teams, getting the 73-3 win. I mean, they were up 51-0 at half. I don't take it. Just like Arkansas. If you play a SWAC team, dude, I can't take a whole lot from it. The freshman receivers, Perry Thompson, Cam Coleman, Malcolm Simmons, all did their thing. They look good. So does Keandre Lambert-Smith. We'll see. They get a little tougher challenge this week against Cal, but it's tough to take anything from a SWAC team. But Auburn wins 73-3. And then Southern Miss Kentucky finally made it through, but they didn't finish the game. They started, but I think they called it at the end of the third, 31-0 Kentucky. Southern Miss, they looked a little better. Brock Vandegrift, 169 yards, 3 touchdowns. Did have a bad pick. Sumo Kembe, I looked like he got a little better, 8 yards a carry, 59 yards. With Chip Trainum out, they're going to need another running back. I mean, we'll see. They're going to play a good defensive front in South Carolina this week. South Carolina's going to come out a little with a chip on their shoulder because I think everybody, myself included, is going to be talking down on them. But Southern Miss, 31-0. I mean, I would maybe have taken Southern Miss in the line there, but A little surprising, but Southern Miss is so inept on offense, and Kentucky's so good on defense. I was really just wanting to see what Kentucky did offensively because Southern Miss isn't terrible defensively, so they would have given a good look. But Kentucky getting the 31-0 win in a game that ended at the end of the third quarter. Let's go back to the old chat. What do we got going on here? BC up 21-6 now. Joe K, hook 'em horns, beat Michigan. Big one this week, baby. The SEC needs that one, Joe. Appreciate you listening. Then Honest, the Gray's back, baby. Being how South Carolina has you all blocked, it made it clear they don't want you guys around campus October 19th. Hope to see you fellas around. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. We just call a spade here, guys. If you don't like me not predicting you games, you got bigger issues. I used to work in college athletics. I used to work in college football. I know how these operations work. That's a little soft on the University of South Carolina's football program. I'll call a spade a spade. Chris Phillips may not even like me saying that on here, but I think that's a little soft that you want to do that. Sorry, I said you don't have a true wide receiver one. You don't have an Xavier Leggett this year. You don't have a Juice Wells this year. That's a fact, folks. If you want to get mad about it, that's on you. Facts over feelings. That's what I tell people all the time. Even when I'm talking to buddies about politics, facts over feelings. I don't care how you feel. What's the fact? University of South Carolina, fact they blocked us. Fact is they have a problem with us predicting them losing when inevitably I don't think they're going to win a lot of games this year. So call it what it is. Get me all fired up over here, Honest to Gray. Get me fired up. But I appreciate you listening, man. I appreciate you listening. Keep firing those chats in. But moving on to the next segment, we went through the SEC. Let's give you the quick power ratings. We're already 51 minutes into this. I got 3 more things I want to get to you. Power rankings, let's briefly go to. Coming at number 16, I mentioned South Carolina. They can move up this year. But, man, Old Dominion, come on. Come on, Shane. Again, before they blocked me as well. But South Carolina coming at 16th. I got Florida coming in at 15th. Makes sense. I think Mississippi State coming in at 14th right here. Vandy coming in. Let me pull this up real fast. Vandy coming in at Vanderbilt as high as they've been in the old power rankings for Dave Shumate here in a while. Coming in at number 13th after that big win. Arkansas coming in at 12th. I think Arkansas is probably better than Vanderbilt, but we'll see with Arkansas this week. We're going to find out a lot about them. Again, I can't find out a lot about stuff when you play a SWAC team. IMG Academy would skull drag some of these SWAC teams. Number 11, Texas A&M. Still like the defense, still like the defensive front a lot. I think the offense can only get better, so that's why I keep them there a little bit. Kentucky, we haven't seen them play a 4-quarter game yet because they got canceled, but they were up 31-0. It's probably a below-average Southern Miss team. I want to see the offense this week, that offensive line against a good defensive front for South Carolina and Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart. Number 9, LSU. I think some of LSU's problems are fixable. I mean, obviously, you got to get away from the dumb penalties, the undisciplined stuff. But I think the offense, they can figure out, hey, let's start getting our ball to Kyron Lacey, CJ Daniels, Mason Taylor, stuff like that. I think they can fix some of that. The defense is going to be what they are. They're going to be aggressive. But I agree with that because of the lack of personnel. Auburn coming in at 8th. I feel like we really won't know much about them until they play Arkansas in a couple weeks either. Because they got who? Cal and Mercer. I think they got Cal this week, then Mercer. Oklahoma, I think we'll find they get Houston this week, but I think we'll find out a lot about them against Tulane next week. Tulane's got K-State and Oklahoma back-to-back, and then Oklahoma opens up with Tennessee. So we'll find out about Oklahoma probably mid-October. But I had them sitting at 7. Missouri defense looked faster. Brady Cook missed one with Luther. That's what concerns me in a big game for Brady Cook is him leaving some meat on the bone with Eli Drinkowitz, Kirby Moore drawing up some plays, and him just missing it. He's not consistent sometimes in there. He misses, like, in a basketball reference, like some wide open threes that someone would draw up that you're like, man, you got to sink that one, man. We drew that one up for you. You got to slam it home. Yeah, he missed some the other night. But, again, I think that defense is a little faster, more athletic than I gave it credit for. Tennessee coming in at 5. You know how I feel about the top 5 here, guys. There's no change from this past week. Tennessee sitting at 5. They're deep across the board. I think Nico Iamaleava is the real deal. Number 4 at Alabama, I mentioned the physicality stands out, speed. Guys in that Kane, Womack swarm defense, they're playing a lot more quicker. They're not having to think about the pattern matching that Nick Saban would do. Again, Nick Saban's the GOAT of all time. It's just processing's different. Guys can go play a little quicker without thinking as much now. And I think offensively they're going to really get it going. You love some speed. They got Kendrick Law, obviously Ryan Williams. I think the running back room's as deep as anybody in the country. Justice Haynes, Jam Miller, Richard Young. They're loaded. Then the Hill kid as well from Meridian. Coming in at number 3, Ole Miss. I mean, they did what they wanted to do against Furman. Couldn't take a whole lot, but Ole Miss is deep. Got a lot of guys back, a lot of continuity at the coordinator positions. Got to like the Rebs right now. Number 2, Texas. I was really impressed. They shut out a Colorado State team that I think is going to be good on offense. in the Mountain West. They have an NFL receiver in the Horton kid out wide. They got a quarterback that Colorado State, from talking to those guys, they liked that he thought they could go put some points on because they were concerned about that Texas secondary. Didn't happen. So Texas at 2. The number 1, Georgia, you saw it. Played with their food a little bit in the first half. Some penalties set them back. I know Mike Bobo's getting some flack on the Twitter timeline, the X timeline, but he's not creative. And I'm one of those guys too at times. But a lot of it was penalties was setting them back and lack of execution. Georgia just as good as anyone at halftime, anyone in the country. You see it all the time. But come out and dominate Clemson. So that's how I would rank right now the power rankings. Again, South Carolina coming over 16, Florida 15, Mississippi State 14, Vandy 13, Arkansas 12, Texas A&M 11, Kentucky 10, LSU 9, Auburn 8, Oklahoma 7, Missouri 6, Tennessee 5, Alabama 4, Ole Miss 3, Texas 2, and Georgia 1. Go back to the chat. Looks like we got another one. Honest the Gray, here he is. Is Seth Luttrell being conservative on Jackson Arnold? 1 for 12 on third down against Temple has me nervous. You're about to hear that stat from me here in a minute. Is he being conservative? Yeah, probably in that Temple game. Temple's a bad football team. They did what they're supposed to do, but you're right. That's something that concerns me. You're going to laugh about this here in a minute. Here, Honest the Gray. All right, moving to the news segment I'm going to do each week on the Monday episode. The best things I saw this weekend. It's going to be a little heavier this week. Like there's going to be more teams because I want to talk about every team in the league this week, being week 1. But the best things I saw from week 1, and then the worst things I saw from week 1. But let's lead off with the good news. Best freshman Nate Frazier looks like the next great dog, probably since DeAndre Swift from an explosive standpoint. 11 carries for 84 yards and 1 touchdown. Trevor Etienne will be back, folks. This is the first time in the Kirby Smart era that I think his top 2 running backs are being more of home run threats than he's ever had. So I think that's one of the best things I saw this week. Nate Frazier, true freshman, taking over 11 carries, 84 yards, and a score when Georgia needed him the most. So big props to Nate Frazier for the Georgia Bulldogs. How about Arkansas going 10 for 10, scoring a touchdown on every drive on Thursday? I'm not going to take a lot against Pine Bluff because I think IMG Academy would crush them. Oak Grove High School down the street may crush them. But going 10 for 10 against the Air is impressive, folks. Bobby P's back in Fayetteville, and they're loving it. Auburn's wide receivers, great start for a new-look passing game. All 4 of Auburn's leading receivers Saturday night made their Tiger debut. Like I mentioned, Malcolm Simmons, Perry Thompson, Cam Coleman combined for 235 and 3 touchdowns. That's really good against anybody. I know it was Alabama A&M, but still, it was a good thing to see. Mississippi State executing Jeff Lebby's system to a T on Saturday. Executing their stuff to a T. Yeah, you got to get fired up about that. If you're Mississippi, again, I think for 1 year for Jeff Lebby, year 1, win 5 games, win your 4 non-con, start this week against Arizona State. Obviously, you got the win against Eastern Kentucky, and then just steal a conference win. It's never a great year or a good year to have a losing record, but you would take that if you're putting out a good offensive product that looks like what they're going to do this year in Starkville. The offense very executed tempo perfectly. Bulldogs efficient, 57 plays in 21 minutes and 54 seconds of possession, scoring on all but 3 of their drives, and it didn't result in the end of a half or the game. So just average, just a cool 7.9 yards per play, 16.5 yards per completion. It's a good day at the office for Jeff Lebby in his first game in Starkville. Going across the state, another good thing I saw this week, another one of my favorites. Jackson Dart, 418 yards and 5 touchdowns. Great game, right? That's at the half, folks. Against a solid FCS team in Furman. Against anybody, that's impressive. But Jackson Dart putting it up. Big offensive day in the Magnolia State. Going to Rocky Top, Tennessee's depth. 8 different receivers caught passes. 28 different players had tackles. Now, I know when they get into SEC play, and even this week against NC State, you're not going to be having 28 different guys having tackles. Probably not even going to have 8 different guys catching passes, but still just shows you the competitive depth they have built. And that's why I like the Vols when you factor in their schedule. How about, I mentioned it again, the Texas secondary. The Horton kid is a legit NFL receiver for Colorado State. And Texas secondary last year got torched at times. That was big for Pete Kwiatkowski, PK and the defensive coordinator, and Blake Gideon and those boys that work with that Texas secondary. That was big for them. They put up a big donut. They put up the big goose egg against, I think, a Mountain West offense is going to put up points in that league. And then finally, another best thing I saw, Diego Pavia, the Vanderbilt quarterback, folks. He's changed Vanderbilt. He's got some juice, dude. He's making them a little swaggy, the kids say these days. Like he's gonna make them competitive if that offensive line can stay somewhat healthy. They start taking some injuries, getting beat up a little bit, all bets are off. But right now, you kind of got to like Vanderbilt. Does Vanderbilt get a conference win this year? I'm telling you, watch out for that South Carolina game coming mid-October. I'm telling you, especially if South Carolina didn't have any momentum, and Clark Lee wants a conference win. They can go 4-0, get to 5 wins with a conference win. That'll be big. Again, it's never good to have a losing season, but man, Diego Pavia has really changed that landscape, gave them an edge. No one expected them to beat Virginia Tech. Again, depending on who you talk to, that's the biggest win of the SEC weekend. I mean, I lean Georgia when you factor in the context and stuff, but it's 1A, 1B. I think a lot of people would disagree with me. But moving on to the worst things I saw this week. Alabama's left tackle, Caden Proctor, injured shoulder in pregame warmups, wearing a sling in street clothes. Interesting. I'd like to see the video. That we won't, but it doesn't sound like it's long-term. They think he may be back for that Wisconsin game in a week. Next week when they go to Madison for big noon kickoff. But that's a tough loss. Your franchise left tackle that you had come back, transfer back from Iowa, gets injured his shoulder in his pregame warmups. It's tough. Another worst, Florida's right side of the offensive line. We talked about it. They're moving Damian George to the inside, right guard from struggling at right tackle last year. Cam Waits gets the start. He's no good. Brandon Crenshaw-Dixon couldn't get the job done. Why can't Florida get the offensive line right in year 3? Bad thing to see. Bad thing to see. How do they get it fixed? I don't know if they do. Another worst thing I saw this week, LSU's discipline. We've talked about it already. The Kyron Lacey shooting gun, whatever you want to gimmick, you want to call it after his touchdown. Major Burns taking his helmet off after a big 4th down stop and push LSU back. LSU's coaches don't know, but Garrett Nussmeier's telling them, hey, there's a 2-minute warning now. Do y'all want to get a play in? It's not good, folks. Not good. The Jordan Gilbert one, give a little bit more leeway, but it's a targeting that essentially ended the game. LSU's discipline, man, it's got to get better, but it was not good this week. It's one of the worst things I've seen. Connor Weigman, Colin Klein combination. I don't like this marriage long-term. I don't think it's going to work out. I think this is what could hold A&M back because I think they got a 9-10 win defense. I just don't know how they're going to factor this in. I don't feel like Colin Klein feels comfortable calling plays that fits Connor Weigman's strengths. And I don't think Connor Weigman feels real comfortable playing in this system. You can tell throwing off his back foot, moving away from his landmarks. We'll see. But that was one of the worst offensive displays I'd seen. It's one of the worst things I saw this weekend. Oklahoma, here you go. Here you go, Honest. Oklahoma's 3rd down offense. You talked about it with South Latrell. 1 for 12 against Temple. You're right. You're right. When you see Tulane, I'm telling you, Tulane's going to give Oklahoma a fight. Tulane's, I think, better this year than that team 2 years ago, or 3 years ago. When Pratt and them came in 2021 and gave Oklahoma a game. They're going to be tested, but 3rd down against a 1-12 Owl team, or they're 1-12 on 3rd down against a bad Temple Owl team, something to be concerned about. You're right. And then South Carolina's offense. I mean, Sellers isn't great, doesn't fit the Dow login system. No wide receiver 1, in my opinion. The offensive line doesn't look much improved. They gave up 4 sacks to Old Dominion. Who I was telling people, Old Dominion's not a terrible football team. I think they're a little worse than last year, but it was a bowl team nonetheless. But again, 4 sacks in week 1 when you need that offensive line to be really improved because you're going to be running the football because that's where your strengths is. Should be with Lenore Sellers, Rocket Sanders, Oscar Attaway, Robbie Ashford if you mix in some packages. South Carolina's offense, I said it all offseason. A lot of people didn't believe me. They don't have a great wide receiver 1. I don't like Lenore Sellers and Dow Loggins, similar to Colin Klein and Connor Weigman. They don't really fit. They don't mesh well, the systems together. I don't know about relationship-wise, but just their system core beliefs and the strengths and weaknesses of the quarterbacks don't mesh. So South Carolina's offense not fired up. They got a tough test when they go to Kroger this week in the SEC opener against a Kentucky team that returns 10 out of 11 starters. In that spot, they're bringing in the 1 starter was Georgia starting linebacker Jamon Dumas-Johnson last year, and they still haven't given up a point this year. So those are the worst things I saw. You're going to be seeing the best, worst things I see from each week on Monday's episode. Let's see, we got 3 comments in here. Honest the Gray, glad to be a part of this conference, and I'm glad I came across your crew, brother. Love talking college football. Keep giving good conversation topics, and you'll have me firing left and right, brother. Yeah, I appreciate it, man. We got a lot of feedback from the Oklahoma fans. Appreciate it, dude. Y'all been listening a lot. I love bringing the Oklahoma content because I know it's going to be watched, and y'all are a very knowledgeable fan base. So I appreciate you, Honest the Gray, tuning in, man. Been fun chatting with you on this one. We got a couple more things to go, though. They gave Lincoln Riley and Grinch a loss at USC. Yeah, for sure. Joe K, OU still sucks. Hook 'em horns. There we go. We got the Red River shootout going live on our show tonight on Monday night. And then JK, good show. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate you listening there, Joe K. Let's keep bringing in the Red River shootout, baby. Let's keep bringing that rivalry into this show. Dave Talks Ball. But let's move on to the last one. We got to review. We got to review the bets of the week. Money making review. Let's pull it up. Money making weekend review, folks. 5 and 5, 500. Now put the bold money line. Now, when I do bold money line, just so y'all know, let's just get to it. We'll talk about it. All right, so here's the review. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, we'll do 10 each week, and we'll do a bold money line. When I say a bold money line pick, folks, it's got to be a double-digit dog. A double-digit dog. You're picking to be a winner. I'm gonna do that each week. I'm gonna do that each week. But here we go. Here, covering it all. Started off on Thursday night. Colorado, North Dakota State under 16.5. Barely covered. I think it ended up being 57.5. Felt comfortable with these unders and these new clock rules. Teams want to run a little more. Penn State, West Virginia under 51.5. Remember, they had a delay in that game. I didn't feel good going into the fourth, and they decided to both just kind of run it out. Won that. Georgia, minus 13.5. I thought this was the easiest bet of the week. I really wasn't even nervous at half. They covered easily. Florida plus 2.5, big L there. Texas A&M, Notre Dame under 46.5. We were killing the unders this weekend, guys. Killing it. We were 3-1 in unders. The only one we lost we'll get to in a minute, but we're right off the bat. Colorado, North Dakota State under 60.5 hit. Penn State, West Virginia under 51.5 hit. Texas A&M, Notre Dame under 46.5. I thought the easiest two on the board this week were Georgia minus 13.5 and Texas A&M, Notre Dame under 46.5. They did it with ease. Wyoming plus 7.5. What the hell was I thinking? I thought Arizona State may be looking ahead to Mississippi State. They waxed Wyoming. Wyoming is usually a team that goes in there and competes with the Power 4 teams. They got waxed by Kenny Dillingham and the Sun Devils. Took them 7.5, but I think it's 42-7. Lost that one. Michigan lost this one by half a point. They won by 19, or they won by 20. They beat Fresno State by 20. I took minus 20.5, so I lost that one by half a point. Don't hate I took that, but I just thought Fresno State wouldn't score much, and I thought Michigan would score a little more than they did. That's an L. Don't hate it, though. Lost it by half a point. Ole Miss Furman took it under 60.5. Wasn't close. I heard Ole Miss wasn't going to play a bunch of guys, so I figured Ole Miss wouldn't show a whole lot. But hell, Jackson Dart, you remember seeing, threw for over 400 yards, 5 touchdowns in the first half. Mississippi State minus 24. Felt good about that one. They covered. The LSU money line, they lost. So 5 and 5 across the board. My bold money line, double-digit dog was Hawaii over UCLA. Hawaii could have won that football game. What was the – let me see what the final score of that was. I was paying attention to it because it was 16-13, and Hawaii was leading at times. I wasn't too pissed off about that one, but 5 and 5, lost the bold money line, but we're going to lose that most of the year. But for the season, 6 and 7 going back to week 0. We were 1 and 2 week 0. I won the under, but lost Florida State minus 10.5 and Florida State money line. But man, it is what it is. We'll take it. We'll take a 6 and 7 start in the first 2 weeks. Again, you want to be around that 60% right. 60% range. We're just under 50. We're going to get up there. Keep giving me more data, more games, more film to watch. I start hitting the peak for week 4 or 5, folks. So just keep paying attention, keep joining the show. But quick look ahead to week 2, some lines before we get you out of here. Again, guys, I'm Dave Shumate, longtime college football personnel director around college football in the SEC. Went to the University of Alabama, graduated, got started working in football there. So I worked in college football for 9 years. Doing here Dave Talks Ball every Monday and Wednesday. 9 p.m. Eastern. Do not forget to join us. And guys, if you're not, we got previews dropping already this week. We already dropped our Texas-Michigan preview. We're dropping we already dropped Tennessee, NC State, and a couple other ones with Cole Thompson and Chris Phillips dropping those. But again, you got to go like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, folks. You got to, because you have life too. Life comes at you. You got kids, you got work. You can't just go look at SEC Unfiltered's YouTube page and see what they brought up. But if you subscribe and hit that notification bell, when we post a video, it's going to pop up for you. It's going to pop up for you. But looking at some week 2 opening lines, we got the Texas at Michigan game. Texas a 6-point favorite right now. This is a big one for the response to the league. The SEC can't go 0-2 in their big non-cons against the Big Ten. They already lost to USC, LSU. Texas needs this one. I think they will be ready. I like what Texas showed last week and right now. Arkansas getting 9 at Oklahoma State. I think it's a lot. Oklahoma State's so high and low. I mean, they lost to South Alabama by 30 last year. I just think that's a lot. I'm not saying Arkansas is going to win. I'm not ready to say that yet, but I do like Arkansas in the +9 there. Tennessee -7 versus NC State. I'd maybe stay away from that right now. I think NC State's going to play better than they played on Thursday night. This game's in Charlotte. Nico's first it's the best team he's played. I'm not counting Iowa in the bowl game. They had some guys sit down. This is the best team he's played. I could see him struggle initially. I wouldn't touch that. Kentucky minus 8.5 for South Carolina. I said going into the year, this line would be around 8.5, especially after South Carolina struggled against Old Dominion. It's probably one I wouldn't touch either. I want to see Kentucky's offensive line against a good South Carolina defensive front and Dylan Stewart, Kyle Kennard, Tonka Hemingway, TJ Sanders. I want to see that. South Carolina's going to come out with a little bit of an edge in this one. This game's going to be interesting because Kentucky's going to win it. They've lost 2 straight to South Carolina. Shane Beamer, Mark Stoops do not like each other. This is an interesting one. Matchup here, I really do. Kentucky's offensive line, it's going to come down to the big blue wall here. Alabama giving up 31, minus 31 against South Florida. Remember that game was close last year. That's in Bryant-Denny Stadium. That Alabama secondary will be tested by Alex Golesh and the boys. Mizzou minus 34 against Buffalo. Oklahoma minus 28 against a bad Houston team. Auburn minus 13 against Cal. I kind of like Auburn, right? Surface level. Remember that was an ugly game out in Cal last year. What was the final of that? Like 13-10 or something, wasn't it? It was an ugly game last year. I don't expect the same, but I don't know. Kind of like Auburn. I kind of like minus 13. And then Mississippi State getting 4. They're an underdog in Phoenix. Got a couple buddies going to that game. Going out there Thursday and to Phoenix, play some golf, and then them and some buddies at Mississippi State are going to go watch that game. That'll be a fun trip. Mississippi State is an underdog. Interesting. I may take Mississippi State. So the ones I kind of like, just right off the top of my head, I like Texas. I like Arkansas. I like Texas minus 6, Arkansas plus 9, and Auburn minus 13, and probably Mississippi State plus 4 as we stand right now. And I'll give you my official predictions on Wednesday night on that episode. But just wanted to talk about those. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games. The other games they haven't given out lines just because I don't think they're out yet, or they're out, or they're just not worth mentioning right now. But that's just kind of looking ahead to week 2. We're going to find out. That Texas-Michigan game, guys, that's the headliner. It's where College Game Day is going to be. That's a big one for the SEC. Don't underestimate that. Going 0-2 versus the Big Ten and come in December when you're trying to get that 5th extra spot and you look across, that committee's going to make, well, the SEC was 0-2 against the Big Ten this year in the big games when Texas lost to Michigan and USC lost and LSU lost to USC. This game matters, folks. And I get it. The SEC wasn't great in the 4 marquee games, 1 and 3. But really, outside of Georgia, none of those teams are picked in the top 5 of the league, depending where you had LSU, because Florida definitely wasn't, and Notre Dame and Texas A&M for a lot of teams wasn't either. But the other big one to keep an eye on is that Arkansas game. That Arkansas one's interesting in Oklahoma State. Sam Pittman and the boys, they know this is going to be a big game. It's not a far trip. They're going to bus over to Tulsa, stay the night before from talking to their staff. I think they're going to be ready for this one. I'm interested to see how Bobby P. Dials it up. And then obviously we got some interesting ones. Like we said, Cal returning that trip to Auburn, and then Mississippi State hitting the road at Arizona State. Big game for Jeff Levy. Again, I think he needs to go 4-0 in non-con this year and get him a conference win. But that's wrapping up. Before we get out of here, let's go look at the chat. See what some people got to say. Honest, win some conference championships, get a few Heisman winners before you talk to my team. Oklahoma fans going after it. Yeah, so they're just getting after it. I appreciate it, guys. Y'all keep chatting away in it, guys. But yeah, I appreciate it, guys. The week 1 review, we covered a lot in this episode. We went what did we go? We went 73 minutes now. So we covered the initial thoughts from week 1. We covered the big 4 games. We talked about Georgia, Clemson, impressive by Georgia. We talked Florida, Miami. Miami's going to win the ACC, impressive team. Florida. What does it mean for Billy Napier? I think he's gone, folks. I think he's gone. When you think you need to start firing your coach, it's probably time to do it. Interesting thing is, though, it's an interim president at the university. Scott Strickland's already hired 2 coaches, and Dan Mullen and Billy Napier. Most ADs don't get a third one. That's an interesting dynamic as well. We talked Texas A&M, Notre Dame. I think those are 2 top 15 defenses. Offense has to get going for Texas A&M. They got a big one in 2 weeks with Florida on the road. And then LSU dropping a 5th one in a row, but 3rd for Brian Kelly to USC to open up the season. Just lack of discipline. That's got to get better. We did the week 1 power rank, or heading into week 2 power ratings here for me when Dave talks ball. Then we talked about best, worst things I saw from week 1. Went across the board, talked that, and then we reviewed money-making weekend. We're 6-7 total. We went 5-5 and barely lost the bowl moneymaker. But across the board, guys, I appreciate you joining us. Come back on Wednesday, folks. And again, this episode was presented by our friends over at MyBookie.ag. They do a phenomenal job for us here, guys. And remember, before you get ahead of here, go place your wages with these folks. They give us good wages and they're one of our buddies over there. So go use code SECU at sign up to receive a special welcome offer. And then again, guys, go like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. You get busy, you get caught up in your day, but we have previews coming at you starting on Monday each week. You don't want to miss this stuff, guys. And again, once basketball and baseball season get in, we're going to have stuff flying at you. It's SEC 24/7, 365, best SEC entity out there, guys. And again, I'm your host, Dave Shumate. I appreciate you joining us. You have a phenomenal night.